Hello, welcome back to my Facebook page and my YouTube channel, The Anxiety Princess, where we talk about everything and anything that has to do with mental illness. We're basically tapping into our emotions in order to determine what could potentially be causing our mental health related illnesses. If you are new here, my name is Tumeka Moletsane Hankerman. And please note that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or anybody who has been trained to deal with mental illness. I'm purely someone who was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder with severe panic attacks in March of 2019, and I started this page in October 2020 in efforts of engaging about mental illness, to normalize mental illness so that we can sit around the table and actually have a discussion about it without feeling like it's a very taboo topic. So, now that the disclaimer is out, now that the introduction is out, if you are new here, I would just like to say welcome, and I really hope that you will find this space very helpful and very safe. That's the most important thing. And please do feel free to engage. Please do feel free if you want to educate. I don't know it all, and I'm purely telling my story and I'm telling it my way. But I am inviting people that want to share their story. Please let's utilize the platform to the best of our abilities. So I last shot a video about living with mental illness in Black communities, which I shot last month. Why am I talking so fast? Which I shot last month, and obviously now it's a new month, and I think it's fair to say I will shoot once a month. In saying this, like, I have taken a very chill approach when it comes to this channel because I really do believe that I invested so much time and effort in the beginning to deliver the information I wanted to deliver. And the information will always be there. And I think if you're new in the space, you've been recently diagnosed, you have a lot of catching up to do. And so if I don't shoot, I don't feel bad because I'm just like, my people have all the information they need. And what I like about this information is that it's relevant at any point in time. You can go back and watch old videos, and when there's a new topic I want to tackle, then I will come forward and tackle it. And I think it also gives me a little bit of less pressure to not constantly put myself under pressure that, I need to shoot. With the time, with changing jobs, last year, September, it's been a year now, and having my weekends where I can do more stuff with friends, I can do more stuff with my husband, and most importantly, I can get to recoup and just relax and unwind from the week. So I'm really, really taking advantage of that. And as you know, there are things that I do offline. I help people with their CVs, so that I can't do in the week. I have to do on weekends, I have to do after hours. So my weekends, I have just learned to not feel guilty if I'm not shooting because I did the necessary work at the beginning. And I have been advocating for mental illness in my current job, and therefore I've been doing things within that environment. So please don't feel bad. But as you know that I am a mental health supporter. Therefore, if you are going through a rough patch and you feel as though I can assist you, please do feel free to message me and so forth. Cool. So as you know, that once a month I do host a session within the Panda app. If you don't know what that is, please go back. There is a video where I was doing a whole introduction of what that entails. It's an amazing space, and I know that a couple of the Mental Health Nation people have signed up for that. Therefore, it makes me feel so happy that there's another tool that people can utilize in my absence. It's a tool that's available from 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. every single day. So, I really love the work that they do and I support it. Hence, I did decide to go on board with it. So I host sessions every first Monday of the month. So my third session actually was about a week ago. and we were talking about emotional baggage. So as you know that I have covered this topic in the beginning of the channel, I think it's video number 3 or number 4, where I was talking about all the emotional baggage that I was going through up until, the point where this mental illness was introduced to me and I started going to therapy. So in that video, I sort of gave you an idea of the things that could potentially be emotional baggage, but I didn't indulge in the topic fully. And I felt as though maybe this should be a follow up to that. So I do suggest that you start with that video and then watch this one. I'll just do a recap here of all the emotional baggage I was dealing with. And then most importantly, I want to touch on, I have my notes here, I want to talk about why emotional baggage is a bad thing. How can you identify that you actually have emotional baggage? How do you deal with it? And then if I have a few minutes, then I'll touch on healthy reminders for you sitting at home and thinking, okay, I have a whole lot of emotional baggage. So, emotional baggage is not all bad. It's basically all the trauma that we went through in our past lives, whether it be childhood traumas, whether it be relationship traumas. It doesn't necessarily need to be a traumatic event. It could just be an event, but that has quite a significant impact in your life. So if you want to call it, because I know certain people associate trauma with heavy things where, every time you think of it, it leaves you, whether it be abuse, rape, and things like that. But if this is something, I feel as though it's something you can define in your own terms as to if something really has that impact. It could be trauma. It might not necessarily be trauma in someone else's eyes, So I said the definition is past traumas or negative experiences that we experience in our lives. So it's a good thing to a certain extent, because it keeps us on our toes and it keeps us accountable. It impacts and imposes boundaries. So in a sense, let me just elaborate on why it's good. Because when you go through it, you vow to never go through it again. So if you come across again the similar situation, you already know that I have made a promise to myself, therefore I need to hold myself accountable. It's like something simple as if you went through a very traumatic relationship, let's say where your partner was abusing you, right? And you left the relationship and now you meet someone new and they slap you, right? And you have made a vow previously that if somebody does this to me again, I'm going to walk away. So it's almost remembering at that point where your partner is abusing you again, that I had vowed to myself that I'm never going to go through this again. Therefore, that's accountability. So it's good in a sense of holding you accountable. And another thing, it's good in a sense of instilling and imposing boundaries, because you're almost saying in this relationship, the boundary is that you don't talk to me this way. This is a deal breaker for me. I'm talking about an abusive relationship because it's quick for me to come through. But let me bring it back to me that I had said in my previous relationship that cheating was a deal breaker, and lived through a relationship where that was happening. And if it were to happen again, there wouldn't be an excuse. Do you get it? But God did bless me with a wonderful man that won't happen. But I'm just giving an example that, it imposes boundaries, that this is my boundary. And if you go above that, then it's almost a deal breaker. Or when we meet situations of friendships and stuff, and people are challenging you to go above your boundaries, you say, I had imposed this boundary, therefore I cannot go above that. But when I think about it, I'm like, but that's the only two good thing it is. Like, I sat and thought about this, and maybe psychologists would come up with more ways of why it's good. But for me, I just thought like it limits you in so many ways. But before I get into why it's so bad, let me just recap on some of the things that I had said in the previous video. They were emotional baggage. So for me, it was the whole thing of moving abroad, overseas, and where I was basically missing out on a lot of things that were happening at home because I couldn't just randomly come home whenever I wanted to come home. That point of isolation where all I had was my partner and all we had was each other. And um sometimes we fight, and I guess in a good way it helped us resolve issues in our relationship as soon as they come up, because we had each other, and if I'm not talking to him, then I'm not talking. So it was a good thing in that manner. But at the same time, we were in a very stressful environment, and there could be cases where we're both going through a very stressful time at work. So it sort of would be unfair to load my stressful things happening in my life while he's going through his own stresses. So that was the first thing. So it's almost like the career move and the loneliness that it came with. And then the second thing I think was a regret, opportunities that I missed, because if, as I told you, that it took me a long while to qualify as a CA, like 2 extra years, where no, 3 extra years, where 1 year I had to take a gap year because I couldn't afford to study further. And then I failed my third year, and then I failed honors the first time around. So there were failures where I thought I was missing out on opportunities because I was just not getting this qualification. And boy, was I wrong. You know what? Guys, when the time is right, everything falls in its place. If things are just not going well at the moment, it doesn't mean that, it's denial. It's just a delay. And when you come across things in life, you actually realize, no, man, this was not a delay in any shape or form. I wouldn't have pegged my life to work out any other way like it has. So I think that one, like, that was the biggest lesson in my life, that delay, or that me not qualifying immediately, was a good thing. It was a good thing, because opportunities that have come across, then I don't think they would have necessarily come at that point in time. It's so hard to explain, but now I live by it. I don't somehow else people's life. Like, I don't somehow else people's life, because they had to go through things. The minute you start wanting other things that people have, you have to want the negative things that come with it as well. They will tell you the good things, but they won't necessarily tell you the bad things. So for me, it was like past regret, like missed opportunities. I wish I would have qualified sooner and so forth, but God was there to show me you qualified just as at the right time. But at that point in time, when I was going through my mental turbulence, I didn't look at it that way. And then it was pressure. Pressure was one of the emotional baggages I was carrying, especially when I started, like, when I look back now, when I started my articles, I think there were two of us that didn't have CTA, and all the people that I started with had CTA. So I almost felt the pressure to always extend myself more so that I excel. And measuring things, they were buying cars and so forth. Like, I felt as though at that point in time I was not where my life was supposed to be. And remember, with my move overseas, guys, I left a job as a manager to be an assistant manager. So it all looked nice, but at the same time it just didn't make sense for me as to why are you leaving a manager job for that. And you know what, God was like, child, you need this, because when I came back, I was senior manager. So, like, it's a way of things working themselves out. But at the time when it's happening, you just like, I don't understand why this is happening. So it was that, and that whole thing that people were getting cars. I didn't have a car. Okay, people were buying homes and all these things, and I think God was like, why are you panicking? It's all gonna come. So it was that thing of pressure and peer pressure, that I felt as though my peers were more in a financially stable position, whereas I wasn't. My peers were getting married and so forth, although I was engaged at the time. But yeah, it's basically what I'm trying to show you, because we're constantly trying to measure ourselves to our peers and saying my peer has A, B, C, D, and I don't even have E, kind of thing. But I believe that things have a time and a place, and it's just not your time and place as yet, but we learned that the hard way. And then it was the other emotional baggage I had was forgiveness. Like, I have hurt and been hurt by people in the past. And I'm talking about family, I'm talking about friendships, And I am, I don't forgive easily. Like, I don't pride myself about this, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I don't forgive very easily. And once I make a decision that I'm not going to forgive you, like, you automatically just disqualified from my life. And I'm not proud of it, but I've hurt people as well along the way. Friends, I've lost friends. Maybe it might be something that I did. I've lost friends because of things that they did, and so forth. And sadly, in one of that situations where I was hurt by a friend, we didn't address it, and sadly they passed away, and like, those are the moments for me when I'm like, I need to fix this. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean that you need to bring that person back into your life. It could just be a moment of contentment where the person knows that you have forgiven them, but you just don't want them again in your life. There is something like that where you forgive people, but I just don't want you in my life, but I forgive you. And in this particular situation, I wish I would have done that, where I told the person that I forgive you, but the person never acknowledged. So that becomes a whole thing. And family members, the same, family has done me dirty, and it's okay. I haven't forgiven them, and I'm working on it. And last but not least, okay, no, second last thing, the other emotional baggage I was carrying was fear. And, guys, fear has stopped me from doing a lot of things. Fear has stopped me from tackling new things. Like, I'll make an example. A lot of people are like, you should go into influencing, you have this and this. And for me, it's the fear. It's almost seeing what the impact is on other people and almost making it mine, kind of thing. Fear has stopped me from grabbing opportunities that come because I often feel as though I'm not good enough for them, and so forth. So when this happened, when my mental illness issue started, I sort of remember things that I haven't done, and I often wondered what could have been of me had I not let fear stand in the way. But now I believe fear and faith don't coexist. So you need to choose one. So that was that. And then the last and the biggest challenge for me was grief and loss. I lost my father in 2006 when I was doing matric, and I made peace with it very quickly because he was sick. And the peace that I made there was that, he's no longer in pain. That was peace for me. Then in 2013, I lost my brother, and the peace there I haven't found. I am still very confused. I am still very much angry at God for doing that. I think I spoke about this, and if I speak about it now, I'm probably gonna cry because I miss my brother so much. Yeah. So that was basically um okay. That was basically the emotional baggage I went through. Please forgive me. And please go watch the video to fully understand the extent. I'm not really elaborating in it in very much content and detail because there is a video about it. So now we're going to touch on why is emotional baggage a really, really bad thing. So the first thing is you fall into a cycle of constantly being emotionally drained, right? Because emotional baggage is basically unaddressed emotions. Because if you don't address something, it sort of follows you. So what we do with emotional baggage, we encounter it and we leave it there, and we're like, I'll deal with you later, and we move on. And when we get to another stage of our life, we encounter another emotional baggage, we pack it and we leave it there and we move forward. And as you reflect on your journey, and now you're starting to address the emotional, you'd realize the extent of the emotional baggage that you're carrying, and then you're constantly finding yourself in a state of being emotionally drained because the volume of the baggage is bigger than the time that you have. So you're constantly in a state of, I am feeling emotionally drained, because you have to address them at some point. So the more emotional baggage that you keep leaving behind, the more emotional baggage you're going to have to address at some point in time, right? The second thing is that it's bad because it delays your healing process. Guys, healing comes with contentment, healing comes with acceptance, healing comes with acknowledgement. And when we do not address our emotional baggages, one of these three elements are not attended to. And usually it's contentment. When you make peace with something, you feel the contentment. You feel content. And content brings a pure acceptance. Like you almost accept the situation that you're in and you deal with it. But when you're not content, you can't accept the situation, right? And therefore, you often find that because you keep delaying the time when you're going to address your emotional issues, it eats into the time for your healing. Do you get me? So if I reflect back on my journey with mental illness, like I've healed from a lot of things. I've had to attack a lot of emotional baggage except for the loss. And now the loss is standing between me and being fully healed. Like, I can tell you that for free. It's standing between me and being fully healed. But the reason why I can't address the loss yet is because I am still in the most denial phase that this happened. Do you get it? So my healing is delayed. I fully acknowledge it. But I have dealt with some of it, the emotional baggage, and I've ticked some of it all. But at the end of the day, if you don't address it all, then you can't completely heal. That's basically that. And then the third thing is that it impacts your relationship with people, whether it be friendships or romantic relationships. Because you are coming with trust issues from your previous relationship, you bring them into the relationship that you're in now. Because you didn't address that breakup. And now every time your current partner does something, you're comparing it to the other person. And had you walked out of a relationship with pure contentment and acceptance that this relationship is over, and you walk into a new relationship saying there is no way I'm going to compare my current partner to my previous partner, you know, then you're good. But if you're constantly comparing and you haven't made peace, you're constantly gonna be in a situation where you're comparing your current partner with your previous partner. Therefore, it impacts your relationship. It's a similar thing with friendships. I have 3 friends, right? The one, I've been friends with her since forever because we were neighbors. The one, we were friends from high school, and the one was someone I was staying with, and we became friends now before I moved overseas, right? And then in the beginning of this year, a lot of people on Instagram wanted to meet me and have lunch. And what I decided to do was just to have one big lunch for everybody, because I honestly thought that, these are people I engage with and I enjoy engaging with. Maybe they can also enjoy engaging with each other, kind of thing. And from that, a small group arose of a circle that we're trying to create. But if I tell you that had you asked me to do this a year or two ago, I would have done it, because I had serious trust issues when it came to friendships because of the previous hurt that I've endured at the hands of friends. And number 2 is the fact that I've hurt friends and I didn't think it was fair for other people to be hurt by me. Do you get it? So out of that, something very amazing came out, which is a sisterhood, which is a circle. And, we meet once a month for birthdays to celebrate beautiful milestones, to cry with each other, and to do so forth. And it was the first step I took towards not judging friendships based on previous burden that I've gotten from friendships. So when this happened, I thought to myself, you are walking towards a part of healing. You are healing because you're letting new people into your life in the space of friendships, and you are allowing yourself to go into the space of friendships. So it does impact your relationships and friendships that you're gonna have. So just think about it. Okay, and then it creates a habit of avoidance, where you're constantly piling up emotions. So what often happens is that we deal with one thing. Let's say it's a breakup in 2015. You broke up with someone. You didn't fully work through the breakup, and then you're like, I'll come back to you. And then 2017, you engage in an abuse, and whether it be emotional, verbal, or physical, and you walk out of that situation, but you're like, I'm not ready to deal with you yet. You leave it there. 2018, there's a loss in the family. 2019, you lose your job. 2021, this happens. So you sort of live in drips and drabs of emotions unattended, right? And you come in 2022 and you encounter one scenario that combines all of them, and then they hit you like a wave. And you're like, what? Because as much as you're leaving emotional baggage within those years, there's no guarantee that you're going to tackle them piecemeal basis. There is no guarantee you're going to eat the elephant in one go. The elephant might come as one in 2022 and be like, you left me in 2015, you left me in 2016, you left me. Now I'm here. You have to attend to all of us at once. That is the danger. You become you become a hoarder of emotions because you're leaving them slowly but surely, thinking you're going to attend to them. And then one event happens in 1 year and you have to attend all of them. So don't get into a habit of leaving too much unattended. I try to leave 2 and go back to 1 and so forth. I try to not let my emotional baggage exceed the number 3. In that manner, then I can attack. And then if they come, I don't feel extremely overwhelmed. That's me. Maybe set a rule of how many emotional baggage you're allowed to leave and for how long you're allowed to leave them for, because at some point in time, you have to attend to them. Cool. I'm so sorry. And then it creates boundaries that do not necessarily need to be there. Cool. Boundaries are good, guys. I'm not gonna lie, boundaries are good. But boundaries are bad when there's no need for boundaries. Do you get it? So we often create these boundaries and we almost wanna put them in a puzzle, but it's not the right piece of the puzzle. And you want to impose a boundary where the boundary is not necessary. I don't know if I'm making sense. So because you're trying to safeguard your heart, you're trying to safeguard your well-being, you're imposing that boundary on things that are not equivalent to why you came up with a boundary in the first place. Right? Let me make an example. You imposed a boundary when, let's say, you were, I keep making reference to a relationship, guys. I think it's the easiest thing. So let's say, for instance, your previous partner was very controlling and he wanted to check up your every move and so forth, right? And you basically had to be present in the relationship 24/7, and you imposed a boundary that someone is allowed to call me once and that's it. And now you get into the relationship with someone and it so happens that they call you in the morning to check up on you, and then they call you in the evening to say goodnight. And now you have enforced a boundary of one call a day, but you can see that this one is coming from a good place. So now you're trying to impose that boundary, but maybe it's not necessary because you know what controlling tendencies are. But if this person is calling you in the morning to check if you woke up fine, you made it to work, and the evening they check up that you're okay, you got to home safe, then is it necessarily a boundary that needs to be there? It's debatable for each person. So we almost start imposing boundaries where there isn't a need to impose boundaries. Guys, not every situation needs a boundary. That I can tell you for free. Cool. And then it cheats you of opportunities. You miss out on a lot of things. I missed out on having acquaintances. I'm not gonna lie. Because not every encounter I had with people necessarily was gonna amount into a friendship. Some could have been acquaintances. And I have now started working on that, opening myself up on social media and so forth, meeting really amazing people that have come into my life and changed a certain perspective, changed certain things, not because they are my friends, but because they are acquaintances. Where someone I'd be like for instance, this one time I was looking for a therapist that would help someone for free, and someone referred me to someone, and it happened. So do you get it? It's acquaintances that I could have met, and they could have been a valuable part of my life in the context of an acquaintance. Do you get it? So I missed those opportunities because I was safeguarding myself from past pain created by people that I've allowed in my life. Cool. And then second last thing is that you become a victim of your emotions and those that were at fault. Here's the thing, guys, about emotional baggage. Sometimes it has one and two people, right? And let's say a relationship has you and your partner, friendship has you and your friend, grief has you and the person who has passed on, right? And now that person is no longer in your life, but whenever someone mentions that person's name, you split fire because you just I don't want to hear that person's name. But strangely enough, on the other side, when they mention your name, that person is okay. So you almost become a victim because you're so much into your head, you're a victim of your own emotions. When it comes to the loss, I'm a victim of my own emotions because my brother's not here to answer for himself. Do you get it? He's not here to come and console me and say I had to leave. But now I'm stuck in that constant place of emotions taking over because I have no one to address them with. So just think about that these relationships that we are so bent on, that when they mention that person's name, you're like, and for hey, I don't want to hear that person. Does that person think the same way? Or have they completely moved on? They're oh, no, what? That one. So you almost become a victim, and you're carrying your own burden and the burden of that person because, Bona, they have moved way past that. Cool. And lastly, you deny yourself contentment and closure. Guys, closure is so important. That minute that you feel like I'm content, I accept, the closure comes like that. But because we are not fully acceptive, we can't get closure. So that little things that you keep leaving here and there, you will never find the closure until you go back, address, understand, accept, and move on. Closure is that thing that brings you the peace to say, I have dealt with this emotional baggage. I took it off. This video is 34 minutes and I think it's going to be a long one. So now we are talking about how do you identify that you have emotional baggage. A lot of people don't even understand that it's emotional baggage because they like, I'm no longer friends with that person, so it's okay, I've moved on and so forth. But you don't understand whether was it fully addressed, and how do you know that this thing is actually emotional baggage. So the first thing is you constantly distancing yourself from things that can evoke that emotion. Like in my case, I didn't want new friends because friendship shows you flames, and in that manner, that whenever someone was trying to get close to me in that space, I pulled back. Could be something simple as, let's go out for tea, let's go out for this, and these does and these. But shockingly, this year I'm shocking myself, guys. Like, people want to meet me and I'm game for it. Like, I want to go. Like, before, like, there was the ladies, and then I went out with one of them and for afternoon tea. I'm gonna meet one of them as well, and I want to meet more and more, and obviously I am being safe. My husband drops me off wherever we go, and I make sure that they know who exactly I'm going out with. So yeah, so you will notice that you're constantly distancing yourself from that thing because you're scared that it's going to evoke the emotions that you felt at that point in time. Relationships, you don't want to date. You don't want to date because automatically you start thinking about all the trauma from past relationships. The second thing is that you're always in comparison mode. Yeah. So the other thing, you're always comparing yourself. Like, you failed something and one of your peers made it through. So now you're constantly in that state of saying, oh, had I passed, I would have been where this person is. That means you haven't dealt with a failure. That's basically what it means. You're constantly comparing yourself to other people that have made it. That means you haven't dealt with the fact that you didn't make it at that point in time. I'm trying to rush a bit. And then you're constantly in I wonder mode all the time. You're constantly like, I wonder what would have happened if. I wonder what would have happened if. Guys, if you're okay with something messing you won't constantly wonder. That's another thing. And then another way of identifying it is that you're always activating boundaries. This is me now saying boundaries don't need to exist in everything, right? And when you're constantly finding yourself in a position where everything in your life has a boundary, then there's something wrong. You're almost always coming up with new boundaries. Boundaries. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. Boundary, Mrs. Boundary. Boundaries are amazing, guys. I don't want to lie. I have a couple of boundaries in my life, but they don't necessarily need to be activated in everything. So when you constantly are safeguarded, then you need to start thinking, why am I like this? Like, what is making me like this? And best believe it, it's something that happened in the past. So you're constantly like, And guys, shame with mental illness, this one is hard to manage. Like, I didn't even want to go outside when my anxiety was at its peak. I just wanted to be at home, and I just didn't want to go outside because outside imposed so much threat to my life. Therefore, I need to be in the house. Therefore, my boundary was I only go outside if someone is coming with me. That was me. So you're constantly finding ways to safeguard yourself, even when there isn't any evidence of real danger to your emotions, to your well-being. Okay, and then You always questioning people's intentions all the time. Like, why is she being nice to me? Why did she buy me this? Why this? Why this? Why this? So, people's genuine intentions, you are always questioning them all the time. Guys, people don't do things because they have ulterior motives. That doesn't, it's not how it works all the time. Like, for instance, let's say uh I here's an example. Like, I don't like people buying me a lot of things, like gifts, because I almost be like, why are they doing this? Like, why? But guess what? I'm a giver myself. So I'll always go out. But I never do it with intention. Do you get it? So I don't know why, if I'm doing it, it's not okay for anybody else to do it. Do you get it? So I'm always questioning people's intentions. You know, when at the beginning, when people said they wanted to meet me, I was like, why? Like, no, you know. So I'm always on lockdown, like, why? But this year, intentions are very minimal. Like, I think I almost try to understand situations where the intention is probably questionable and where it's not. And in all these encounters that I've had with people, their intentions have been pure till now. Okay. And then you almost find yourself that you're overcompensating, whether it be relationships or whether it be friendships. Because you had lost someone, right? Like a relationship or so forth, or a job and stuff, you almost now want to do too much to maintain and reserve what you have, right? And sometimes that's not how it works. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, my previous partner before my husband, I think I did everything right. Like, everything right to the T, you know? And when I met my husband and when we were engaged, I didn't understand it when, like, I knew I had to get up and clean and stuff like that. But like, with my husband is, if I say I'm tired, he wants me to stay in bed and rest. He wants me to rest. Like, I shouldn't worry about what's for supper and stuff like that. So I came in with the mentality that I need to overcompensate. So it could have been small things, like when I don't feel like going out, I'm like, oh, I know if I don't go out, then it's gonna look funny and so forth. But now when I tell my husband I don't want to go out, he's like, no, I understand, just relax. And like, so I wanted to overcompensate when we started dating by always being fully present, always fully engaging and so forth. And my guy was like, relax, it's okay. And now I've found that I don't need to take everything right for him to love me. Like, I don't need to take things off because he understands when I can't. Do you get it? So we often found ourselves in situations where we're overcompensating. Like, if you don't go out with your friends, then next time you ask them to go out, they're gonna say they can't make it. Therefore, you need to go out. Things like that. So we often we push ourselves just to make other people feel okay because of past experiences. You're like, I need to do a lot, because I did all these things and, the person still lived. Therefore, meaning I didn't do enough. So let me do that and add more. Then that means you haven't dealt with the trauma of that I did so much for this person and yet they left. And you are taking it in the view that you didn't do enough. Therefore, let me do a lot. Okay. And then another thing is you're constantly angry or triggered by things associated with the type of baggage. So for me, when you talk about grief, when you mention my brother's name, I get so angry. I I am overtaken by emotions, because then I start thinking about the moments leading up to that, and the could have, should have, and so forth. And it's not even just grief on its own. When we talk about missed opportunities, then I start feeling so angry that I should have done this at this point in time, and so forth and so forth. So constantly think about how you react to certain things, and then that will almost give you an indication of whether are you okay emotionally. And then I'm just gonna read and touch a bit on how do you deal with it. How do you deal with it? So the first thing is that acknowledgement is key. Do not avoid it. Acknowledge it. You acknowledge it, because acknowledgement and avoidance don't coexist, right? Right? So with grief, I acknowledge that my brother's gone, and I'm avoiding it. Do you get me? So I've acknowledged it. I'm not avoiding it. I'm acknowledging it, but I'm just not ready to deal with it just as yet. So as much as I'm in denial, I know that he's not here. So I acknowledge that there's something seriously wrong here. I haven't healed. I'm not fully healed. Therefore, it is an emotional baggage. So I acknowledge it. I've acknowledged it. But it's just that I'm just not ready to deal with it. Maybe that is avoidance. So when there's avoidance and there's no acknowledgement, then I think it's even more impactful. Then it's almost like you pretending it doesn't exist. Yeah. And the second thing is accountability on your part. Like, you need to hold yourself accountable. If you're saying, I am gonna come back to this emotional baggage in 2 months' time, in that 2 months' time, you have to account yourself. Yeah, that tuna. You have to hold yourself accountable and go back and deal with it. So hold yourself accountable in terms of, I have a maximum of 3 emotional baggages which I need to tackle within 6 months. Therefore, in 6 months' time, I need to reflect and be like, out of that 3, how many have I addressed? Cool. And then another way of dealing with emotional baggage is a gradual approach to addressing it. So eating the elephant on a piecemeal basis. So gradual approach means that you are not sitting in 2022 with 10 emotional baggages that are going to come for you. So you shouldn't wait for a big, massive event to happen for you to deal with emotional baggage. In those calm moments where you feel as though your well-being is at its best, that's more, you are more rational to actually look back and be like, I think I can tackle this now. Okay. And then another thing is forgiveness. I know it hurts. It hurts to forgive, guys, but it hurts you more than the person you actually have to forgive. So you have to forgive and say, I forgive you, but I just don't want you in my life. The minute we lack forgiveness, that's when we hurt even more, because the person you're not forgiving, why don't they chill? They moved on. They're like, I apologize. She's the one who's not forgiving me. You end up hurting more, because in your head, you're like, this person is not taking accountability. But in fact, they have to a certain extent, because they apologized. But you're the one who's not learning to forgive. Cool. And then you need to understand how you got there in the first place. And then that's why I'm saying, in those moments where your wellness is good, your well-being is good, that's probably the best time to attack emotional baggages, because you're more rational to think and identify trends and patterns into how you ended up in a state. But when you are all over the place, your emotions are all over the place, you're probably not gonna understand the extent of how you got there in the first place. Cool. And then another way of dealing with that is focusing on relationships that matter. We waste so much time dwelling on relationships and friendships that didn't work, and it's into the current ones that are working. Focus your attention on this. Your relationship is working, But because there's that one emotional baggage that you didn't address, you almost like spoiling the good thing that's happening now. Focus on the relationships that matter. Utilize your energy to make the relationships that you have work, and don't let them be impacted by things that do not concern them, that happened in the past. And then, most important one, seek professional help. Guys, I'm not even gonna lie, therapy was the one thing that helped me actually layer. It was like I was an onion, and then there were layers of me that were being peeled. And peel after peel, I realized something new about myself. You're not going to get the help that you need from this video. You need to go to a professional so that they can kind of enforce a kind of thinking that you need to have when you get into the space, and then you gradually work with your therapist on identifying patterns and trends that actually resulted in something being an emotional baggage. And then you need to identify toxic traits in relationships, whether it's by you or by your parties, right? So the one way, we often very oblivious to traits, actually, to toxic traits. We justify them and so forth. Like if you tell someone, I don't like this, I don't like you being late, I don't like you not calling, I don't like this, and someone is constantly doing it, that's toxic, guys, because they're constantly doing something that you don't like. That's a toxic trait. So you need to constantly identify toxic traits and how they ended up being this big thing. It could be that your previous friendship didn't work out because you constantly felt as though you were always there for your friend, but your friend was never there when you need them. That's toxic. That means they want to do they want you to avail yourself every single opportunity where they need you, but they can't do the same. That's toxic, guys. You can't expect things that you can't do for others. Like, you can't expect people to go above and beyond for you, but when you don't go above and beyond for people, So identifying toxic traits, whether it's you who's doing them or whether it's people, whether you the instigator or whether other people are the instigator, you need to identify and correct those toxic traits. Cool. And lastly, you need to enforce boundaries that are clear and simple. Here's the thing. So I had said that boundaries are very super important, they're very healthy and so forth. But if your boundary is not clear and simple for somebody else to understand, then there's something wrong there. When you explain to someone that I do not like people calling me after 10 because I am sleeping. Simple. I'm not going to call. The time limit is 10 because she is sleeping. Right? And then you're like, I don't like people calling me during the day. I just don't like it. Then it does make sense. What is the why? Here's how you make it work. I don't like people calling me during the day because I'm usually at the office working, therefore I cannot attend to my phone. But that's very clear. When the boundary is, Sana, I cannot date someone with ugly feet because they stink. That's not clear and precise in my view, because ugly feet don't necessarily mean that they stink. Do you get me? So it needs to be valid, clear, and simple, and easy for the next person to understand. Okay, cool. And then in the last minute, I'm just gonna read some healthy reminders for you to take forward if you think you have emotional baggage. Is that one, the past hurts, they're not a reflection of who you are now. I'm not gonna lie, guys. If somebody did you dirty, it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on them. Like, past hurts are not a reflection of who you are. Secondly, how you feel matters. Never let anybody tell you that your feelings are not valid. If somebody did something you don't like and they don't see the wrong in it, it doesn't mean that when you're a drama queen and you sing things that are not there, your feelings are valid and they do matter. Thirdly, it's not a marathon, it's a sprint. Pace yourself, right? So this one is, often we find that people want you to rush your healing, want you to rush how you deal with things. And if I have put myself and said 6 months, I'll have it addressed, and I'm on month 3 and somebody is harassing me to do it, I'm going to tell them, I have a deadline of 6 months. I'm going to pace myself, because 6 months is the timeline in which I take accountability. So never let somebody rush your healing. It's going to come when you are ready to deal with it. 4, not every bad thing in the past is meant to harm you. Some, they are meant to heal you. Not every bad thing that happens is meant to harm you. Some are meant to heal you. Right? I've lost friends in my life. And if I do a process of reflection now, I'm like, it was a good thing. It was a good thing, because maybe my life wouldn't have turned out the way it is. Maybe I would still be confused about certain things, and I value the lessons that I learned in those friendships, because they contribute to a certain level of where I am now. So not everything that happened that was so bad was meant to break me, but some of it has healed me and given me a new perspective where life is concerned. And another thing is, learn to crawl before you walk. Guys, we wanna jump at things, but sometimes you need to crawl in order to be fully developed in order to walk, right? I'm crawling through my grief because I can't walk in this grief moment, right? And part of me crawling is me gathering evidence, is me trying to make sense of things as confusing as they may be. And then once I've painted a good scenario, then I'll gradually start walking the path of acceptance, the path of acknowledgement, the path of this and this and this and this. You need to crawl. It's baby steps, guys. If you can attack 1 out of your 10 emotional baggages, that is good. That is something. You have crawled through something, and you'll crawl through the next and the next and the next, and eventually you will walk. And last but not least, is a perfectionist encountered so many failures and mistakes along the way. This comes with a comparison. We compare ourselves so much to people and want things that people have. Do you know how many times they had to fail to get there? So you need to be willing to fail to get somewhere. A perfectionist didn't wake up as a perfectionist. They had to make room for errors and mistake and learn from those and fix it and do it all over again, right? So when you are busy sabawelling people's lives and comparing yourself, having a whole lot of peer pressure, remember that person had to walk a journey of failing through a whole lot of things before they got to where they are. So as you compare, just remember that you have to also be willing to take in some of that failures to get there. It just won't naturally happen, as people say. So yeah, guys, that's basically what I wanted to cover. I had to rush through certain things, but I think you get the jinx of it. Guys, emotional baggage is the thing that is messing up your well-being. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. You have to deal with it. You have to heal from those things in order to heal completely where your well-being is concerned. So what emotional baggage are you carrying? Like, do you even know if you're carrying any, or am I the only person walking around with emotional baggage? But I don't think so. So I hope you guys will enjoy this video, and I hope you guys will have a beautiful, beautiful week. I'm not gonna have the greatest weeks because my husband is going away for work and I'm just not okay. Like, I'm having some serious separation anxiety, but I do know that he's doing this for us. Like, he's doing this for me and him, because me and him are one. But guys, I hope you'll have a beautiful Sunday and stay blessed and have a beautiful week.